Hello, it's Tambarambaa here, and it's my turn to share my project for Art by Marlene and our challenge that's on. I'm doing a project called Circle Mania, which is a technique that I've used lots of times. A friend of mine, Jen, introduced me to it, and it's kind of my go-to. I often use it. So what you need to start with is I'm using a journal out of the Rainbow Journal. I'm using one of the leaves out of that, but you can use any of Marlene's papers because they all take mixed media and water really well. So I've popped it down and I've popped down some glasses. So your glasses need to be a few different sizes. So they need to be upside down on your page just to get a nice sort of seal around the rim. And I've used sort of champagne glasses for some smaller ones and yeah, just some other sized glasses. So then you need to spritz with some water just to get some water both onto your page and spritz your watercolours. Now I'm using Marlene's Brighter Than Bright watercolours. I just love them because they're a bit neon and very vivid. So yeah, just basically add some water and then run some of your paint around the edges, as you can see that I'm doing. And yeah, you just sort of move the water around. You might need to add a bit more water every now and then. You might see me picking up the water spritzer and adding that as well. And just be mindful with your colours. Just so, for example, if pink and green are next to each other, you will end up with a bit of mud. So just think about where you're putting your colours around your glasses. But basically, even if you do get a little bit of mud, once it's dry, we can then build on top of that and cover that up. So, okay, so now I've done the paint around the edge. I'm adding some flicks, so lots of water on your brush, some watercolour, and just flicking all over the place. Yeah, now it's time to lift up the glasses and you'll see it leaves nice crisp circles behind. So what you need to do at this point is dry it a bit. I think at this point I discovered my heat gun wasn't with me, so I went off to get it. So yeah, so now I'm just drying it just so that we can start working with the next layer. So I'm just covering a bit there that might have been a bit sort of murky. You can come back over with colours and brighten it up even more. So now I've grabbed the new 8x8 paper pad, which I absolutely love, using it in all my projects. And I've just grabbed a bit of a spare part that I had from another project, and I'm drawing some circles, tracing some circles, some smaller circles this time, and just cutting them out. I'm not being too particular because we're going to draw around the edge of these after, so they don't have to be perfect circles. So yeah, just cutting out a few different sizes out of that paper and then kind of working out where I want to put them on my page. In a moment, I'm going to add some stamping. So I grab stamp 11, which is called Life's a Beach, and I also grab stamp 10, which is called Underwater World from the So-fish-ticated line. So originally I just decided to stamp onto some card and I was going to cut them out, but Marlene stamp so perfectly that I just decided, you know what, I'm just going to stamp straight into the circles. So what I'm doing here is I'm grabbed a spare piece of scrap paper and I kind of made a mask out of it. So I cut it into the circular shape and then I just laid it down and then stamped on top of it so that the stamp then ends at the circle and doesn't stamp into the colour. So it's just a little masking technique that I've used. So I'm kind of putting some sea themes into each of the circles. So I've done the little crabby in one, a couple of the little fish in another, and then I've dug out from the die cut the new paper elements, which is DCB02, and I've just grabbed a couple of the little seaweeds, and then I'm using a stamp as well I'll do that in a minute, sorry. So at the moment I'm using the new wonderful from the Essentials range that came out with this collection, the Alpha stamps, and they are stamped 17, called Creative Alphabet. So I've stamped C into the circle, and as you can see I used that masking technique again, just so the letters didn't go over into the green. Okay, now I've added the seaweed stamp to the background of the larger circle, and then I'm just going to add the elements, die cut elements on top. So I'm sticking down the circles now, not thinking too much about where they're going, just sticking them down, and I use a gel medium to do that. So putting a little bit on the back and then a little bit on the top to seal it as well. Okay, so that's kind of my larger circles done. Oops, I've forgot that I added in some little bubbles. What I'm doing here as well is I wanted the smaller bubbles for the little fish, so I have covered up the larger bubble with some washi tape, just another sort of bit of masking just so I can stamp where I want to stamp. Then I've done a quick dry off, and I've just started to add some colour again using Brighter Than Bright, which is WCB M04 is the code. Yeah, and I'm just adding some colour into the little characters. Aren't they cute? That crab is so cute. He looks so happy. Yeah, so I'm just painting them up, letting the colours blend into each other a little bit, just to give a more sort of natural feel to it. I could colour for days. It's so much fun. Right, I'll just go quiet while this bit's happening. Okay, so now I've grabbed some paint pens and I'm coming in and outlining with black just around the circles. At this point, you do need your page to be quite dry. I would probably go off and do something for half an hour and then come back. I, of course, am doing it on the video and it's probably not quite as dry as it should be, and so sometimes my paint pen's having trouble drawing onto that sort of damp surface. So ideally let it dry. So yeah, just going around the edge, don't need to be too particular because I'm going to come in and add more paint pen detail and actually sort of make it a little bit more messy. Don't want it to be perfect. So now I'm using the bubble stamp again to stamp in some more circles into the background, and then I'm adding just a few more circles with a paint pen again. So you can go to town here. You can do as many as you want. And I'm also using a finer paint pen this time. So I used a thicker one last time. So this one's a bit finer. And this one I'm just doing sort of repeated circles, just sort of for a scribbly, messy look. And then I'm adding a few little scribbles in as I go as well. So I think this is the point where my pen was struggling on the dampness. So I've tried to dry it off a little bit more. So I just keep adding in some scribbles and a few lines, and yeah, this part's very, very relaxing. So I'll go quiet again while this part happens. Okay, so now I've come in with a white paint pen and I just add the details of the E and the A, just fill in that little bit for the C part, and I'm adding some white to my bubbles just to bring a bit of white back into the page. I find putting white amongst all the bright colour kind of makes it pop and lifts it. Yeah, so I'm just adding a bit of white. Then you'll see I came back in with my finer black pen, and I've added under the, so that the title says Under the Sea, and then I'm just adding in a few little details here and there. And then I'm adding some of the watercolours back in again and adding them to the die cuts just to really pop them and make them a bit brighter again. For any of you that know my work, you know how much I love bright colours, so I often add a bit more colour to die cuts just to pop them. So now I've covered up my large white circles, and I've got a few fluoro paint pens, and I'm just simply flicking them onto the page. And that's the final step. So there you have it. So I hope you've enjoyed this today, and I can't wait to see what you all do, what you create. Have fun.